The message came through just as I was finalizing adoption papers in my lawyer's office. Emma, we've decided to redirect your trust fund to Amanda. She has 3 kids and needs it more than you. The transfer will be complete by Friday. A moment later, my father chimed in. It's for the best. You understand. I stared at my phone, a calm smile tugging at my lips. Everything all right, Miss Carter? My lawyer Michael asked. I handed him the phone. He read the texts, eyebrows lifting slightly before glancing at my expression. You don't seem surprised. I'm not, I said, turning back to the adoption paperwork for little Sophie. I made arrangements 3 months ago. At 32, I'd spent my life being the responsible daughter. While Amanda married young, had 3 children, and leaned heavily on our parents' generosity, I built a career in child advocacy and saved carefully. The trust fund, set up by our grandmother and meant to be split equally once Amanda and I turned 35, was never secure in my eyes. I knew my parents too well. They'd always favored Amanda. Every scraped knee, every bad grade, every reckless financial move was met with comfort. My own accomplishments, valedictorian, a successful career, homeownership, were brushed off with distracted nods. 3 months ago at a family dinner, I overheard them whispering about Amanda's latest crisis. Her husband had blown their savings again on another reckless investment. Emma's trust fund could help them, my mother said quietly. She doesn't even have a family to support. They didn't know about Sophie. They had no idea I'd been working with an adoption agency for over a year to give a home to a 5-year-old girl who'd lost her parents in a car crash. They didn't know because they'd never asked. The next morning I visited Michael, my grandmother's former lawyer and a trusted friend. Is there any way to protect my share of the trust? Yes. He'd smiled and pulled out a document. Your grandmother was a wise woman. She added a clause. If anyone attempts to alter the distribution without both beneficiaries' consent, the entire amount is immediately released to the original recipients. That afternoon I moved my $2.5 million share into a secured account. Not for me, but for Sophie's future and for the Children's Advocacy Center I've been quietly planning. Now, as I sat in Michael's office, I typed a short reply to my parents. Thanks for letting me know. My phone buzzed instantly with calls and texts, no doubt expecting tears or protests. I ignored them all and focused on finalizing Sophie's adoption. Tomorrow she would come home, to a warm house, a loving mother, and the security my grandmother had intended for all her great-grandchildren. Not just Amanda's. Should I inform them about the clause? Michael asked, setting aside the finalized paperwork. Not yet, I said. Let them find out the hard way. I glanced at the photo of Sophie on my phone and smiled. I've got more important things to focus on. As I left the office, the messages kept coming. Amanda now involved, ranting about how she deserved the money because she had real kids to raise. My parents flip-flopped between guilt trips and demands. I drove home in peaceful silence, thinking about Sophie's new bedroom, painted in her favorite colors, shelves lined with books, soft stuffed animals waiting on the bed. Tomorrow she'd have her forever home, and I would finally be a mother. My parents' attempt to control me with money had come too late. I had already built something more meaningful, something they would never understand. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was still the quiet, obedient daughter. In less than 24 hours, they'd realize the quiet ones are often the ones you should never underestimate. The next morning, just as I was about to leave to pick up Sophie, my parents showed up unannounced. My mother's styled hair and my father's crisp golf shirt couldn't hide the tension on their faces. Emma, we need to talk, my mother said, trying to step past me into the house. I blocked the doorway. Their eyes flicked to the little pink suitcase and backpack by the door. Are you going somewhere? My father asked, puzzled. Yes. I have an important appointment in 20 minutes, I said, glancing at my watch. More important than family? My mother asked, slipping back into that all-too-familiar guilt trip tone. Emma, your sister is desperate, my mother insisted, eyes pleading. The kid's private school tuition is due, and Tom's business, Well, it didn't pan out. Again, I said quietly. My father's head snapped up. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I replied evenly. But I have an appointment. We can talk later. I reached for my keys, but my mother grabbed my arm. There's something you're not telling us, she said sharply, her gaze flicking to the small pink suitcase by the door. Those look like children's bags. What are you planning, Emma? Before I could respond, my phone rang, Michael's office. I need to take this, I said, gently prying her hand off my arm. It's my lawyer. Your lawyer. My father's face flushed red. Why are you talking to lawyers? I answered the call and put it on speaker, deliberately. Hi, Michael. Am I still good to pick up Sophie at 10 o'clock? Yes, he replied warmly. Everything's finalized. She's excited to meet her new mom. Silence fell. My parents froze, faces pale, confusion and disbelief written across them. Adoption, my mother whispered. You're adopting without even telling us. I'm 32, Mom. I don't need your permission. I picked up Sophie's backpack and slung it over my shoulder. Now, if you'll excuse me, my daughter is waiting. Daughter? My father's voice cracked. But what about the trust fund? We already promised Amanda. That's not my concern, I replied, locking the front door behind me. You made your choice about the money. I've made mine about family. You can't afford a child without that fund, my mother blurted out. This is reckless, Emma. You need to stop this nonsense right now. I turned to face them fully, the calm mask slipping for the first time. You know what's funny, said my voice cool. You never once asked about my savings, my investments, my plans. You just assumed I had nothing because I didn't broadcast it like Amanda. They exchanged uncertain glances. My father cleared his throat. Well, on your salary. My salary as a senior child advocate, my portfolio, and the inheritance Grandma left me directly, separate from the trust, put me in a far better position than you ever realized. Their faces fell. Oh, you didn't know, he added, eyes narrowing. Maybe because you were too busy helping Amanda blow through her portion in the first year. But Amanda needs. My mother began. Amanda wants, I interrupted. There's a difference. Now if you'll excuse me, Sophie is waiting. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw them in the rearview mirror. Stunned, silent, still trying to understand what had just happened. My phone buzzed again, Amanda this time. I silenced it without reading. The adoption center was bright and cheerful. Sophie was in the playroom, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. Ready to go home, sweetheart. I knelt beside her. She nodded, then paused. Will they like me? She asked softly. Who, sweetie? Your family. I wrapped her in a gentle hug. You and I are family now, Sophie. We're going to build something new. Something safe, full of love and trust. And yes, they'll love you when they get to know you. But for now it's just us. And that's perfect. Later, as we drove home with Sophie chattering about her new room, my phone buzzed with a message from Michael. Your parents tried to access the trust. The clause triggered. Shall I proceed? I glanced at Sophie in the rearview mirror. She was hugging her elephant, gazing in awe at the neighborhood. Yes, I typed back. It's time they learned about Grandma's real legacy. The next morning the chaos began. My father's voice filled my voicemail. What do you mean the money's gone? Emma, what did you do? My mother's texts swung between threats and weepy guilt trips. Amanda's were frantic. You've ruined everything. How could you be so selfish? I sipped coffee at the kitchen counter while Sophie devoured her chocolate chip pancakes. Are you sad? She asked, maple syrup glistening on her chin. No, sweetheart. I smiled, wiping her mouth. Just thinking about how perfect this morning is. The doorbell rang, followed by pounding. I looked out the window. My parents' car was in the driveway. Amanda's minivan pulled up behind them. I didn't move. I had already opened the door that truly mattered, the one to a real future, a real family. And this time it was mine. Sophie, remember how we practiced for loud situations? She nodded and calmly pulled her noise-canceling headphones from her backpack. Good girl. I kissed her forehead. Let's go upstairs and read while I handle this. Once she was settled in her reading nook with her favorite book and stuffed elephant, I walked back downstairs and opened the front door. Amanda stormed inside without a word. Her face was flushed with fury. How dare you steal my children's future? Interesting choice of words, I replied calmly. Considering you were planning to steal my share of the trust. That was different, my mother cut in. We were just trying to help. Help who, Mom? Amanda's kids or Amanda's lifestyle? I gestured to Amanda's designer purse, her fresh salon highlights. When was the last time you asked me about my life? My plans? My dreams? You never needed help, my father snapped. You were always stable. Stable? Echoed. You mean boring? Reliable? The perfect backdrop for Amanda's chaos. Well, guess what? Grandma saw this coming. She knew exactly who you were. I pulled an envelope from my bag, the letter my grandmother had left with Michael. Would you like to know what she really thought about your parenting? My mother sat down heavily on the couch, her face paling. What are you talking about? Grandma didn't, she wouldn't pick sides. She didn't have to. She just watched. That's why she added the clause to the trust, to protect me, to stop this exact betrayal. But where's the money now? Amanda demanded. You have to give it back. A small voice came from the stairs. Mama, my book fell. Sophie stood at the landing, headphones around her neck, hugging her elephant. The room went still. My mother looked from Sophie to me, her expression unreadable. She called you Mama, she whispered. Yes, I said, walking over to pick up Sophie's book. Everyone, this is Sophie. My daughter. You spent the trust fund on her? Amanda gasped. No, I said with a smile. I invested it in something far greater. The Carter Children's Advocacy Center opens next month. A place for kids like Sophie to get legal support, counseling, and a real shot at a future. They stared at me in stunned silence. The trust wasn't just money. It was Grandma's legacy. And I'm using it to protect the ones who need it most. My father sank into a chair, defeated. All this time I was building something meaningful, I said. While you were busy preserving appearances, I was creating a future. Not just for Sophie, but for hundreds of children. Amanda's voice cracked. But what about my kids? Their tuition. Maybe it's time they go to public school, I said gently. Like I did. Maybe they need to learn the value of earning, not expecting. Sophie tugged at my sleeve. Can we finish our pancakes now? Of course, sweetheart. I turned back to my family. You're welcome to be a part of our lives. But only if you're willing to be part of something bigger than country clubs and favoritism. No more manipulation. No more treating me like a backup plan. My mother looked at Sophie again, really looked. Then she turned to me. She has your eyes, she said softly. The same determination. She has Grandma's spirit, I said. And like Grandma, I won't let anyone take advantage of those I love. They left quietly, subdued and thoughtful. I returned to the kitchen and sat beside Sophie. Are they mad? She asked, mouth full of syrupy pancake. They're learning, I said, pouring her another splash of syrup. Sometimes people have to lose something to understand its value. That evening, after Sophie drifted off to sleep surrounded by books and warmth, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Your grandmother would be proud. Maybe we could visit the advocacy center when it opens. I smiled and typed back. Sophie would love that. She especially loves story time, if you're interested in reading to the kids. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about building something stronger from the ruins. Sophie and I had created our own kind of family. And maybe, just maybe, we could help my parents and Amanda build something better too. But this time it would be on our terms.